Sorry.
No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're spending a few moments in Underground USA. I find it astounding how the American people, and especially the American electorate, have allowed academia and the mainstream media complex to lead them by the nose down a path that finds them accepting the evils of Marxism. It sounds unbelievable, but it's true. 35 years ago, the free world watched as the Communist Chinese Party ordered the slaughter of Chinese nationals in Tiananmen Square who dared to protest for their God-given right to freedom. We watched their tanks crush people and the People's Liberation Army shoot the very people it was created to protect. And just 33 years ago, at the fall of the Soviet Union, Americans fully understood the dangers posed by Marxism. We all saw the totalitarian nature of a brutal Soviet regime, the oppression, the scarcity of food and medicine, and the lack of basic rights and opportunities afforded to the free world. We routinely watched as those attempting to escape East Germany over the Berlin Wall were shot, and their families detained by the notorious KGB.
Ayer, el señor presidente de los Estados Unidos, a quien yo llamo el diablo.
With the election of Hugo Chavez in 1998, we watched Venezuela fall from the fourth wealthiest nation on the planet to an impoverished third world country, as Chavez implemented policies that redistributed wealth and nationalized industries, which led to a collapse of the economy and the country's descent into economic and societal chaos. One after one, every country that has instituted Marxist ideology in their governments has suffered both economically and societally and devolved into, as Donald Trump would say, third world hellholes. This partial list of countries decimated by Marxism bears this out. There's Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba, the Soviet Union, now Russia, East Germany, now part of Germany, China under Mao Zedong, Zimbabwe, Nicaragua, Laos, Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge regime, Vietnam, Ethiopia, Angola, Mozambique, Tanzania, Uganda, Somalia, Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. And this is just a partial list. Each of these countries, the peoples of each of these countries, were and are plagued by the gifts of Marxism. Under Marxist systems, individual freedoms, such as freedom of speech and freedom of the press, are restricted in favor of the state's interests and the ruling regime's preferred narrative. Centralized economic planning by these governments in these nations has led to government inefficiencies, food and product shortages, and economic stagnation as state-run industries fail to keep up with the demands of the market. And despite the propagandistic goal of Marxism to create an egalitarian society, in practice, it leads to the emergence of a privileged class of party elites and bureaucrats who benefit disproportionately from the system. In nations that institute Marxism, the lack of checks and balances in their government systems leads to widespread corruption and abuse of power, which always ends up in the elite's advantage. Marxist regimes have a long and chilling history of committing human rights violations, including censorship, surveillance, and the persecution of political opponents. And one of the maladies we are seeing emerge in free nations around the world is the denial of and encroachment upon free speech rights. In nations that have seen their governments fall to Marxism, opposition to the ruling party or government is often oppressed, leading to a lack of political freedom and the stifling of dissenting voices. Now, if any of these points just mentioned sound eerily familiar, it's because we, the American people, and in reality all the peoples of the free world, have allowed Marxism to creep into our societies, doing so under the far left's false flag operation to advance ideological tolerance and inclusion, even after they have routinely expunged both, where individualism, capitalism, and Americanism is concerned, from our now Marxist-captured education systems. In fact, the West's tolerance of Marxism has destroyed every nation it has ever been implemented in, and is responsible for well over 100 million people being slaughtered under Marxist regimes, including deaths due to executions, genocidal mass killings, famines, and other forms of repression. Yet today, we have Democratic presidential and vice presidential candidates whose proposed policies and platforms are steeped in Marxist philosophy, to include the totalitarian oppression of censorship and admiration for central government planning. We see this in Harris's price control policy and want for Medicare for all, and her blatant disregard for the constitutional process in our government. Ladies and gentlemen, and I say that because I scoff at the idea of ideological made-up genders, we have two dyed-in-the-wool Marxists running under the Democrat banner for the presidency and vice presidency of the United States. It was bad enough when Clinton and Obama began infusing the tenets of Marxism into their policies, more so under Obama, who is a Marxist, than Clinton, who was just a political opportunist cuckolded by his wife Hillary. But now we have full-blown Marxists vying for the Oval Office who aren't even trying to hide it any longer. In fact, they're shopping it to a disillusioned electorate as good policy, as equity, as joy. This election cannot be hijacked by the mainstream media complex and the social media overlord fact-checkers into being a personality contest. Simply put, and I don't give a damn whether you like the people running or not, as that point is truly irrelevant. This election is between opening or closing the door to Marxism as a core political philosophy for our government. It is a choice between the United States of America joining the long list of failed nations ideologically assassinated by the evils of Marxism, or a return to freedom, opportunity, and Americanism. Face it, under the 3+ years of Biden-Harris Marxism, coming off the 8 years of Obama Marxism with just a 4-year break, our country has deteriorated on a massive scale in every way. It's time to change course. My fellow Americans, this November, choose freedom over Marxism. Believe me, your grandchildren won't end up hating you for your choice. When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station, WGUL, AM 860 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Our First Amendment right to free speech is under attack by woke activists and politicians. Wokeism seeks to suppress opinions and ideas that are deemed offensive, insensitive, or problematic, thereby stifling the free exchange of ideas and the pursuit of truth. It emphasizes social justice, identity politics, political correctness and the regulation of language, and relies on euphemisms and ambiguous language to create the illusion of consensus, thus avoiding confrontation with opposing viewpoints. Wokeism is antithetical to free speech because it stifles the free exchange of ideas and the pursuit of truth. This is in direct opposition to the principles of free speech. Wokeism is an ideological cancer shopped by those who want to control you. This November, we have an opportunity to render wokeness to the ash heap of history. Vote smart. Vote against wokeness and those who would use it to control you.
And, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is often laced into illicit drugs and used to make fake versions of prescription pills. You can't see it, taste it, or smell it. Suppliers mix fentanyl into their products because it's potent and cheap, and the dealer might not even know. Keep yourself and others safe by knowing the real deal on fentanyl. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
We're going to be watching this DNC this week, of course. But there was something that you posted, if I recall correctly, earlier today on Facebook, something about the crowd size for Kamala Harris. And I think I laughed out loud when I saw it. Could you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, credible reports coming out of North Carolina estimated the gargantuan crowd that Kamala Harris had when she was at the recent rally in North Carolina at 250 people.
Oh, my gosh. Are the others just, are they high technology? Are they zooming in? Or what's happening with this? And Trump has thousands upon thousands.
It was mostly media that was there to cover her, 250 spectators. I assume highly vetted because she's not doing any rallies that are vetted or invitation only. There was just, with all that media there weren't a lot of sound bites, weren't a lot of video clips, weren't a lot of nothing.
And there weren't any, and there weren't any of the rap stars either, I guess, at that.
No, this was one of the rallies where she didn't give away things or have a pop star doing a free concert. And people need to understand, when you hear people who are pro-Harris screaming about the large crowds that she got in Wisconsin or in Nevada, that's because she's opening her rallies and closing her rallies with pop star concerts.
Wow.
The people are there to hear the music. They're not there to hear her.
And certainly what we did hear from her on Friday was, can you imagine a time when we've heard about a presidential candidate, with words associated like Soviet Union, Venezuela, communism, stuff like that? I mean, this was really something over the top.
And some of that was coming from the Democrat side.
Yeah.
When the Washington Post comes out with a scathing opinion editorial about how your economic policy of price controls is, in effect, Marxism, that's astounding. I mean, that's something that needs to be remarked upon. You don't have aligned publications going after you like that if it's not over the top what you're proposing. And what she is proposing, and I heard one economist say she shouldn't talk about economics at all because she's illiterate about it.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a statement coming from your side.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, do you think that they are they saying the quiet part out loud, or is this just a selling point for people who think, oh, good, they're finally going to get these prices down, even though it's not price gouging. Nobody seems to believe that that's actually what's happening, because it's because of inflation, not because these corporations are making record profits like the grocery stores, for example.
Yeah, grocery stores are not making record profits. That's just the way it is. They may be paying dividends to their investors, but that's money that's owed the investors. You've got to remember, when you've got fuel prices that are through the roof like this, it affects everything. From the packaging of food to the delivery of food, at every point, it raises the price of the food. And that goes with every product that's sold. If your policies are making it hard for transportation, and I believe transportation is up like 15%, and that's just over the last 2 years. If you've got that kind of inflation in transportation prices, it transfers to every single thing that you bring home from the store, whether it's from a big box store or from a grocery store, and that affects the economy. So her idea about, well, we'll just cap. We're just going to cap what you could charge for a product. That's going to not only destroy the economy, it's going to send the country into chaos. Now, when you talk about the Marxist plan for the United States, sending the country into chaos facilitates radical change.
Right.
Right.
I was going to ask you, see, is it just laying a basis for tearing down the system and then putting something else in its place, that kind of thing?
The rhetoric that was used 5 days before Barack Obama was elected the first time is not hollow rhetoric.
Well, Frank, I was just seeing some video from Chicago, and it was a big sign with some protesters behind it, getting ready to do some marching, I guess. And it said basically, what was it? It was LGBTQ for a free Palestine. And I was going to ask you, do they have any idea at all about what the society is like under Hamas and what would, I guess, be a quote free Palestine?
Yeah, clueless. They're clueless. That crowd, when it comes to Islamofascism throughout the Middle East, is clueless. They consistently believe they are defending the downtrodden, while they ignore video evidence from places like Afghanistan and Iran, even in some places of Saudi Arabia, where that demographic is not only belittled, they're murdered. In Iran, they march homosexuals up to the gallows and hang them, or they bring them to the tops of buildings and push them off. And that's just... It's been proven. There's video proof of it. Yeah. It's not an exaggeration. In Islam itself, people who are found guilty of adult homosexuality are sentenced to death. When you're talking about the Quran and the Hadith and devout Islam. So these kids over here who are marching around under the rainbow flag, defending the Hamas and the Palestinian people, they've really got to start waking up to the realities of the world. These are the people who get the degrees in South African LGBTQ gender studies, and then wonder why they can't get a job in real America.
Right. And I might add, too, I think the sign also said feminists as well. Yeah. And that's not going to go over too well in that kind of a regime either. And it really is mind-boggling. But, as you mentioned, Frank, people may say, well, I'm helping defend the downtrodden. But Hamas actually subjugates the people to begin with, and has brought this horrible war upon them.
There's a reason, and it doesn't take much in the age of information. and especially in the age when you can use AI as a search engine. There's a reason why the Arab and the Islamist community in the Middle East doesn't want to have anything to do with the Palestinians. The Egyptians have erected a wall. Jordan doesn't allow them. Saudi Arabia doesn't want them. Iran funds them to keep them away from Iran. Iraq doesn't want them. It's because everywhere they go, they try to take it over, and they do it using violence.
Mm-hmm.
So downtrodden, I think they're getting what they dish out. And to single out the Israelis for everybody else could put up a wall and say you can't exist here, but Israel's got to absorb them. That's not diversity, equity, and inclusion.
No, it's not. But it's a way of once again, going after Israel, because the ultimate plan of these nefarious forces, obviously, is to destroy Israel from within or without. I think it makes no difference to them. But as long as Israel sort of ceases to be,
which is stunning, because the world community woke up after World War II and said these people who were almost wiped off the face of the earth by a fascist regime in Germany has a right to exist. And then all of a sudden, it was almost like an immediate about face. You've got the right to exist, but we condemn you. What the hell is that?
Yes, exactly right. And just to sort of to emphasize this here, there was a Hamas official that was talking on CNN in an interview, abruptly ended the interview when he was simply asked the question, is there any regret, or do they accept any blame, Hamas that is, for the civilian deaths in Gaza? He went on to accuse the interviewer on CNN of being pro-Israel, blah, 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 and then walked off. I mean, that's kind of speaks volumes there.
Well, it speaks the truth. The world, at least certain parts of the world, certain elements within the free world, have been pointing out through this entire horrible event starting on October 7th that Hamas has been using its own people as human shields, especially women and children. That's why some of the body counts that you see are elevated. And I'm not talking about the Hamas numbers, because they're exaggerated by almost tenfold. But they won't admit it, and they won't take any responsibility for what they're doing. There are even some quotes out there from Hamas officials who have now been dispatched from the face of the planet that they want to inflict these kinds of numbers on themselves because they can parade that knowledge disingenuously on the world stage to make Israel look bad.
Oh yeah, it's a means to an end, and it's monstrous that they are doing just that.
Well, and you hit on something here that is endemic in not only the Islamo-fascist community, but the Marxist community. Means to an end. When the ends justify the means, bad things happen along that path. And right now, when you're looking at the political process in the United States, we're seeing that. Say anything, do anything, manipulate any numbers, manipulate any appearance of endorsement, manipulate everything just so one side can win. And then, hey, we'll just ask for forgiveness later. Maybe we won't. We'll just do what we want because you've been stupid enough to vote for people who will deceive you into getting your vote. The report that Kamala Harris has been putting out fake news at buying fake ad space on Google and rewriting headlines from news organizations to manufacture support from those organizations. That's straight up propaganda. And that's what fascists and Marxists do to achieve their goal. The ends justifies the means.
Yep. And they're not doing that because they know that they're winning in a walk. I think they would be doing that because they are terrified that Donald Trump has a very, very good chance of winning this election.
I don't know if I'd go so far as saying terrified, but they know what they have to do to be able to win. Mm-hmm. So they've rolled out David Plouffe and Obama 2.0, who is now in full control of the Kamala Harris campaign. Make no mistake about that. David Plouffe and Obama 2.0 understand that they have to roll out the biggest gaslighting campaign on the American people that has ever been executed in our nation's history if their candidate is going to win. And they're not going to stop. The throttle's not going to be pulled back. It's full speed ahead from now until November.
Well, that's right. And it was interesting, too, because Kamala Harris did answer a couple of questions when she got off the bus at one of the stops in Pennsylvania, just briefly with reporters. And she was asked, well, what's your speech going to be about? And she said, well, pretty much the stuff I've been talking about on the campaign trail. So I guess nothing new and certainly nothing original from her. Is just going to be another teleprompter speech. Speeches when someone talks and makes a speech. And in that speech, they'll be making speechified speeches. Using their words to communicate. Yes, that's right. In a speech. Well, as we've been talking about, it is going to be a very interesting week indeed, watching what's happening with the DNC. I don't know how much news will break out per se, but and she will get a bump out of this. We know that. That's just a given. It's tradition. But I'm wondering once people really start to find out more about her policies, and that's I think where we've really got to be able to complete the mission there, is so that people understand all the crazy things that she really is for. Because this convention is nothing more than a coronation of the selection from the Politburo at the DNC, because that's exactly what it was. A small group of people who decided this is who we're trotting out in front of the already pledged delegates, and we're not going to have anybody else. It's her. So they're going to trot her out on stage. They're going to coronate her, and this will be the most scripted event ever produced by the DNC. They are going to use every speaker to make sure that the speaker is putting out the policy and the platforms and not the candidate. They don't want the candidate anywhere near this. And I guarantee you that they are drilling into her head not to go off prompter when it's her time. Yeah, I can imagine. Because even in that brief time where she was talking with some reporters, she was kind of getting back to her old self again, where she does not really... she doesn't articulate what she wants to say very well, and you can tell that she's a little nervous about doing that, I think, at this point, because everything is being, drilled into her for that. She's not ready for this moment in time at all. I don't care what Time magazine, their cover says. She's not prepared. She hasn't gone through the process. Yes, she's held office in California. She was installed as a senator and then immediately picked because of her race and her gender to be vice president of the United States. And that's not me saying it. That's Joe Biden saying it. He said it on the campaign trail. That's the reason she's here. She's a DEI hire. And by the way, if DEI is so fantastic, why do people get ticked off if you're calling someone a DEI hire? Yeah. Why wouldn't they say this is our thing? You got it exactly right. That kind of stuff. Yeah, she should be wearing it like a badge. She's completely unqualified for the job, and she's there because of DEI, something that they're trying to shove down the throats of everybody in the United States. So they don't want her saying a word. She's going to be on a tight leash. And, as you said before, and I think our listeners for sure understand, the more she's in front of the microphone, the more she proves herself to be inept for the job and unknowledgeable. And like I said earlier, when an economist from your own side comes out and says she shouldn't be talking about economics at all in the campaign trail because she's economically illiterate,
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, now, do you think Trump can throw her off her game in a debate? Because she'll have a lot of stuff memorized, ready to go. But do you think Trump can, create some havoc, as it were, where she sort of reverts back to original Kamala?
A nightmare for David Plouffe and Obama 2.0 in the upcoming debate is that Donald Trump doesn't name call her, and that he sticks to exposing her record, especially when she was in California, and how that translates to the federal stage. Because I guarantee you they're getting her prepared with little witty, snappy comments to retort the Trumpisms that are ad hominem attacks.
Mm-hmm.
If he can just go up there and act presidential, don't name call, only mention Joe Biden in the context of how Kamala Harris had absolute influence over his decisions, as she keeps saying, as her campaign keeps saying, and stick to the record, stick to what they've done to this country, and how it diverged from what Trump had accomplished for our country in the 4 years he was in,
mm-hmm.
how much better it was than what they've produced. He'll smear the stage with her, because she will go into word salad mode.
Yeah, that is great advice, Frank. That is absolutely top notch. I tell you what,
I just hope someone from the Trump team finally takes it, because I'm not the only person saying it. It's Victor Davis Hanson. It's Alan Dershowitz. It's Mark Levin. Everybody's saying this. Don't do the name calling thing.
Yeah,
stick to the records.
No, that is exactly what he should do. Well, I tell you what, I think we have time for a quick phone call here. We got Eric in Tennessee this morning, Frank. Eric, good morning. Do you have a quick question for Frank Salvato?
Thanks for taking my call. Good morning, gentlemen. Hey, everything everybody's been saying, a lot of people have been saying, is absolutely, in general, correct. Platitudes aside, memes aside, have been correct. With what we have seen just in the past 5 years alone, with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, now an overdrive in the UK, what we've seen throughout the European Union is that the so-called right side of the aisle has been demonized.
Mm-hmm.
People have been, what these people have been saying on the left, they mean 100%. This is not stupidity. This is not incompetence. This is a plan. They will continue to use platitudes. The right has been outlawed, basically in Germany. They've been deplatformed. Mm-hmm. They've been, ostracized, if you will. They've been pointed out as the enemy. Okay. So now we have Kamala Harris.
Right.
Everybody's been, everything she's saying, all the economists are coming out. Oh, it is Marxism. The mask is off. What does Frank think about this? I'll take my answer off there. Thanks, gentlemen.
Very cool. Eric, thank you so much for your call. Frank, what do you think?
Absolutely right. This is the 100-year war. China's been waging it from the very beginning of its revolution under Mao, and they've been overt about it. The United States and the West are their enemy. They must destroy them and dominate them. They call it a 100-year plan. There's a great documentary through the Epoch Times called The Final War. It's long, but when you watch it, your eyes are opened to what the Communist Chinese Party has in store. Now, the Soviet Union fell, but that doesn't mean the Marxist elements there aren't still operating the way they want to. They've coupled up with China and brought aboard North Korea and Iran as the new axis.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Against the free world.
Yeah, you're exactly right. In other words, they don't give up, right? They don't say, "Oh, we got to fold up our tents and go home, and we can't win this thing."
They understand, just like the Islamo-fascists do, that this is a long war that they have to win incrementally, and they've already had major victories on our stage. They've got the education system, and they've got the media. We always go, the media is so one-sided. They only support Democrats. It's not that they're supporting Democrats. It's that the media is full of Marxists who are moving the Marxist ideology forward of centralized government and complete control. So, we've got to stop being squeamish about the term Marxist.
You're right about that. See, that's the thing, because they're fighting for all the marbles.
If you like the podcast, please rate it and comment if your platform lets you. Go over to undergroundusa.com and subscribe to the Substack, and pick up your copy of Nullification, available on Amazon. But more importantly, talk to your friends, family, colleagues, and acquaintances about politics and religion. Do it calmly and employ facts over emotion. You'll be surprised how much you have in common with a great many of those you talk to. It's something we can all do to preserve the Republic. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're listening to Underground USA.
When someone is having a stroke, every minute counts. Just as putting out a fire quickly can stop it from spreading, treating a stroke quickly can reduce damage to the brain. The clock begins ticking as soon as you spot the signs of a stroke, because some treatments can only be used if the patient reaches the hospital in the first 3 hours after symptoms appear. So don't wait. Call 911 right away and get the person to a hospital immediately, even if the symptoms go away. If you think someone is having a stroke, remember the word FAST. F is for face. Ask the person to smile and check whether one side of their face is drooping. A is for arms. Have the person raise both arms and see if one arm drifts downwards. S is for speech. Ask the person to repeat a short phrase and notice if their words sound slurred. And finally, T is for time. If you spot any of these signs, call 911 right away to get the person to a hospital fast. Strokes are medical emergencies. The sooner a patient gets treatment, the better their chance of a good recovery.